Hey everybody, I have been asked recently about my cloth coverings over my lights on my fish tanks here, and I've been asked whether or not I'm concerned about them being a fire hazard or not, and that is a very good question, and my answer is no, I'm not, and I'm going to explain why I'm not. For one, these are LED shop lights. They do not have any kind of incandescent bulb in them. And the incandescent bulbs is what you've really got to worry about. Incandescent bulbs are basically space heaters, and their byproduct is light. They're about 95% inefficient. In other words, about 95% of the electricity that flows through a light bulb gets converted to heat, and only about 5 to 3% of that gets converted into light. So incandescent light bulbs are ridiculous at causing fires and generating heat. When you get into other light sources like fluorescents, or in this case LEDs, they're much more efficient and therefore produce a lot less heat. But there's more to it than that. They're so efficient that they actually use less electricity, so there's less there to heat up in the first place. So in other words, if this LED is, say, 50% efficient, I know, I'll go off on a little side note here, you often will hear the term 97% efficient or 95% efficient with LEDs. That is not exactly true. What is really true is that they are 95% more efficient than an incandescent bulb. It doesn't mean they're 95% efficient. It just means they're 95% more efficient than an incandescent bulb. So even a cheap LED is about 50% efficient, meaning about half the electricity that goes through it gets converted to light, and the rest gets converted to heat and, other losses or whatever. So if you look at how much light this LED produces, it's probably about the same amount of 200 watts worth of incandescent lighting. So if we think about that for a moment, if the incandescent lighting, let's just say it's 90% efficient, that means out of 200 watts, 180 watts of that would be converted to heat. Whereas this is a super bright high output LED shop light, and it's only 40 watts. So for 40 watts, I'm getting about the same amount of light as I would for a couple of 100 watts of incandescent lighting. More importantly, because the unit is probably about 50% efficient, maybe even more than that, and it's only a 40 watt unit, only about 20 watts is getting converted to heat, and that of course is spread out over the length of that aluminum housing and everything else. So if we take my good old infrared thermometer here and we look at where the hot spots are right on the end, you will see that we're talking about a couple of degrees above room temperature. And this holds true for all of my LEDs. I've gone around the room, I've checked all of them. The highest temperature I've gotten anywhere is on my 40-gallon breeder down there. All of these long 4-foot units are the same unit, so they're all basically going to give me the same rough temperature of about 90 degrees. Again, it's barely warm to the touch. If I was going out on a chilly hike and I had a hand warmer in my pocket, I'd want it to be warmer than this. So again, no concern whatsoever for a fire hazard there. Now these little LED units are a little more powerful. These are 30 watt units condensed into a much smaller area. So these do generate a little more heat, and I'm getting just over 100 degrees on these. Again, this is not even hand warmer temperature. So not really concerned about it. If we look at my LED floodlights here, and I'll show you why we're looking at these in just a moment. If we look at the housing itself, we're only looking at 140 degrees. So again, 140 degrees is not hot. It's not anywhere near the temperature of having to worry about it with fire hazards. So the reason we looked at those LEDs is because I have LEDs under these dome lights, and even if we look at the metal itself, it's only 85 degrees. I also have a fluorescent shop light in the other room. It's the last of the fluorescent light bulbs I have anywhere in my house. So let's go over and have a look at that. I already did it myself, but I'll go ahead and do it on camera here so you can all see exactly what we're looking at with a fluorescent light bulb rather than an LED. So hang on half a second here. All right, now I know that's not a whole lot to look at, but this again is the last fluorescent light I have in my house. And the highest temperature I was able to get off of this when I looked at it earlier was 120, well, 125 degrees. There we go. So it's a little warmer. I got about 123 degrees on it earlier, 129 degrees. Now we're cooking. So again, this is at the heat source. This is at the light bulbs where the heat is being generated. If we go and touch the top housing where the heat is being dispersed on the aluminum's nothing, not even close to that. The aluminum's 85 degrees on the top. So again, if I had a piece of cloth hanging over top of this, I would not worry about it one iota. So I will say in closing that the only way I could see the cloth material being a fire hazard would be if there was some sort of electrical sparking, and those sparks could then come in contact with the cloth material. But if you're in a situation where you've got those lights that are sparking, then you've already got a fire hazard on your hands. So again, I'm not going to be too concerned about stuff like that. Obviously, if I set fire to it, then yes, it's a fire hazard. But as far as the lights themselves generating that much heat, it's simply not going to happen. This LED, I just thought about as we were walking back from the other side of the room, is an actual 200 watt LED. It's extremely bright. I did shoot a video where I took this outside at night and showed you what it looked like out in the yard. This produces about the same amount of light as, I'm going to say maybe a 600 watt high pressure sodium, like a parking lot light or a street light. And this one, you can probably already tell, has heat sinks that the LEDs are mounted directly to, and then each heat sink has its own fan. So this one produces some heat, but if you actually feel the air blowing out of here, it's not hot at all. So even, let me find my thermometer here, even if we were to look at this unit, it's just not really hot. Now again, I keep this hanging in the open air because it needs air movement all around it to stay cool. If I were to cover this and the air was not able to blow and circulate around, heat would build up very quickly. But you can see I don't do that. So I am aware of things like fire hazards and heat retention and thermodynamics to some degree. I know how things get too hot and can catch on fire. So I am, somewhat careful about that. So no worries here. There you go. There's my video about why I'm not worried about my fire hazards. So thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you're subscribed, and I will see you real soon in the next one.